We're back, everyone, with the folks from the Alzheimer's Association here in Nashville. Is it the Mid-South chapter?
Mid-South chapter.
Mid-South chapter, which again covers all of Tennessee, portion of Alabama, like the Huntsville area, and then the Tri-Cities go into a little bit of Virginia. But thank you both for being here, Jim and Tiffany. 737+ if you'd like to call in. If you're dealing with it right now, with Alzheimer's in your family, maybe a spouse or a parent or a grandparent, we'd like you to call in, share your story, and also ask questions. And one of my first questions is, and a lot of people I think have the question is, when you hear the term dementia and you hear the term Alzheimer's, Pat Summitt, we bring up her because you know, it was such a high-profile case. She was diagnosed with early onset dementia, Alzheimer's type, from what I remember reading. What is that, and how are the two different?
Yeah, so dementia represents a group of symptoms. It's not a disease itself. So these are going to be symptoms like changes in memory, changes in confusion, personality changes, behavioral changes. And so if someone goes to their doctor and it appears that they're confused and having memory trouble, the doctor's first going to try to rule out anything physical or mental health going on that could be causing those symptoms. Could it be depression? Could it be a vitamin deficiency? And if it's not, if it is a type of dementia, then they're going to ask, well, what disease is causing those dementia symptoms? And Alzheimer's is the disease. About 70% of dementia cases are related to Alzheimer's. So with Pat Summitt, she was diagnosed with younger onset or early onset, basically Alzheimer's, early onset dementia, the Alzheimer's type, meaning she was diagnosed under the age of 65.
And how often is that?
That's
the
pretty
early
rare.
Onset?
When you look at our statistics, 5.2 million Americans or so have the disease. About 200,000 have the younger onset. So they're getting the disease in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. So about 5% or so of those, you know, in total that are diagnosed. And it's much more rare. Typically there is a more of a familial or hereditary connection with that, where maybe the parents got the disease in their 40s as well, and you know, so on. Typically it's more rare. What we usually see is the late onset Alzheimer's that's happening 65 and older, and as we get older and older, we're more at risk. Right. Yeah.
What are then some of the warning signs? And I spoke to you in the break. My dad, before he passed away, definitely, and he died at age 83, I believe, 83, 84. But you know, the last few years of his life, you know, he had moved into an independent living facility where he could be checked on and still have some freedom. But my siblings and I definitely noticed a cognitive decline. He was still able to function, but you know, short-term memory is what we noticed.
Yeah.
Definitely went with my dad. And I don't know if you viewers at home have dealt with this, but you know, I could sit with my father and he could remember things from 40, 50 years ago and tell stories about college. But within a few weeks or months, he had no memory. He couldn't remember what he did yesterday or the day before.
I usually describe to families it's almost like a cup, you know, of coffee overflowing, and all the coffee in the cup are the memories that happened a long time ago, but that liquid flowing out are things like, what did I have for breakfast yesterday, or who came and visited me 2 weeks ago. And the warning signs, there are 10 warning signs that the Alzheimer's Association educates the community on. Not everyone's going to express all 10 signs. Some may see 2 or 3, and we would say still go to your doctor. Let's figure out, is it something that could be you know, fixed, like a vitamin deficiency, or maybe it's a thyroid problem, or is it something that is progressive and gets worse over time, like Alzheimer's? And the two that stand out to me, the first one's memory loss that disrupts daily life. And so we all have memory changes that happen as we age. Just as our bodies don't move as quickly as they once did, our brains may not work as sharply. But when someone's memory changes start to affect their daily life in a negative way, their quality of life, I think that's concerning. And the third one that stands out to me, and I think to a lot of families, is changes in familiar tasks, the abilities to do familiar tasks, the things they've always been good at. So if your dad was a great handyman or your mom was a great cook, you're now noticing that they're having trouble with those familiar tasks that they could do so well before. Yeah.
Good signs. You know, I sense that maybe families out there might be afraid, and I know initially in my family's case, we grew concerned about my father's physical abilities as well, and he was falling a little bit. But what about families who may see these signs but are just afraid to say anything? They don't want to hurt feelings. They, you know, they don't want that mom or dad or their spouse think that they're trying to harm them in any way.
Yeah, and we hear that from families a lot. And I usually tell them to talk, you know, ask their loved one. I've noticed that you've had some trouble with things you never had trouble with before. Have you noticed that? You know, you don't always have to use the Alzheimer's or memory word, especially if they're going to be sensitive to that. So just, I've noticed you've been having trouble with this. You never had trouble with it before. You think we should go talk to your doctor? So kind of, even though we know dementia and Alzheimer's is not a normal part of aging, kind of normalize it for them. Because some people may be able to take that in better than saying, are you having memory trouble? You know, do you think you have Alzheimer's? Right. So I think it's all in how you... defensive,
that puts them defensive, you know, right away. Gets them defensive.
I think it's all how you frame it for them, you know, how they're going to take it in best.
Have either of you dealt with it personally in your families? Or, I mean, so many people have.
Yeah.
Me first. Yes, it's interesting. In my side of the family, I'm married. There's never been a lot of it, and in my wife's side of the family, 3 of 4 of her grandparents experienced dementia. 2 of them very clearly diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So, and we went through that, and also working with her parents in terms of how you taking care of mom and dad, and the strain and the stress that all of that took on them.
Right. How can you then share that, and do you have caseworkers? I mean, specifically tell me about your staff and the programs that are available for someone who comes to you and says, hey, I need some help.
Yeah.
I need some guidance here to deal with this. This is new to me.
Yeah. I always tell families, you know, we can educate them about the disease, we can connect them with support groups in the community, and we can also connect them with resources that they may not know about that can help them along their journey.
Such as?
So there are different financial and what we call respite resources, a time of rest for caregivers. So sometimes they just need a break, and so we can connect them with those services. It may be that they're a veteran and they didn't know there was some financial assistance that could help them in getting care in the home. We can educate them about the disease, because we know the more they know about the disease, the better prepared they're going to be for going forward. They'll understand better, why is my loved one doing this? Okay, this is why, and this is how I can assist them in the journey.
Right. Do you think that high-profile cases like Pat Summitt, as tragic as that was and as sad as that was, and you know, prior to her, I think of former President Reagan, and you know, some of the bigger, Glenn Campbell, who's still, I believe, now in the late stages. These people are brave enough to come forward. Pat Summitt was one of those people, strong-willed, and I think she knew if she came forward with this diagnosis and her struggle, and kind of shared it publicly, that it would, the awareness would really heighten.
And it does. I mean, you hate to say, I mean, we're extremely appreciative when high-profile individuals do come forward and say, this is what is going on in my life. I mean, I was, when Pat Summitt made her announcement, we had never experienced the level of interest back to the association, the calls to the association, both from media and then from a lot of different people, because it was such a public, she was such a public, strong personality, such a public figure around the country, so well known and loved. And it really helps in the way, because one of the things that we still battle and we still deal with is the idea that there's a stigma associated with being diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Why do you think that is? In this day and age.
In this day and age, it is still something that families, a lot of families, they don't want to talk about. They just want to, you know, take mom, dad, spouses, we're going to go into our home cave and we're not going to talk about it, because, and it's not anything, it's interesting, it's not like it's something anybody's ever done that brings this disease on. So we try to also, there's not a stigma to the disease, and the earlier you can get a diagnosis, the more you can be a part of your care planning. One of the things that we do, that all of our programs folks and Tiffany does, a lot of on a regular basis is bringing the family members in and the patient. They're they're at a place where they're still very cognizant of what's going on.
Sure.
They know what the issues are, and they can be a part of. We have to make a plan for this as a family as we go forward. What are we going to do? What are the end of life decisions? What are the financial decisions that we need to make? How do we need to set up and get ourselves ready to go forward?
Yeah, as tough a diagnosis as it is, if you have a plan, if you're able to make a plan, because we know the disease will progress and the disease will take your life at some point. Everyone's journey is different in how they respond to different treatments and whatnot, but to be able to bring in family what's one of the biggest hurdles then that you face as far as trying to raise awareness? I mean, obviously the Pat Summitt case raised a lot of awareness, but are there other hurdles? Is it that stigma?
Well, I think that stigma for families, I mean, the disease really can change their loved one. They can sometimes personality do a 180-degree turn and just behave totally different than they were before, and they start to have trouble with things they were always good at, who made them them. And so I think some of that stigma,
it's like an identity crisis, right?
Exactly. And we try to help families know that that person's still in there. The way they behave may be different, the way they communicate may be different, but we encourage caregivers to really kind of give their loved one that voice still. They become their voice, and we try to encourage them that they're still them and to really focus on the things that made them them, especially in those hard times. But I think that's where a lot of the stigma comes from, but I think more today now than ever with the baby boomers and age being that risk factor, and you have that large aging population, it's going to be really hard to find anyone who doesn't have someone in their life affected by a type of dementia.
All right, we're going to take another break. When we come back, I mentioned Carrie Sharp did a story here a few weeks ago. We're going to show that to you in just a minute, and also talk about things we can do to try to prevent this from happening to ourselves. We're going to talk about good health, so a little bit of prevention as well. Stay with us. Open Line will be right back.